o'clock in the morning, I got a call from the Danish ambassador, said, Christoph, wake up, there's been a coup. In Myanmar, the army has its own businesses, has its power for the sake of power, and everything else is subordinate to the desire to hold, demonstrate visibly power. An event like this separates the wheat from the chaff. I saw leaders who were in my office crying because they couldn't handle the pressure of the possibility of being here.
Good afternoon, everyone. Today we will talk about low probability and high impact scenarios with a very good friend of mine, Christoph Vavrik, who is the master and the veteran in crisis management, of course, worldwide. Why? Because he's half French, half Austrian. We are in Dubai, where we live, and we will be talking about his experience from managing a crisis in Myanmar. Christoph, the stage is yours. Tell us a little bit more about your background.
Thank you very much, Bohuslav, for this warm welcome. Background, maybe personally, yes, I have a dual citizenship, Austrian-French, but my wife is Greek. At home we speak English. I live in Dubai. I changed country 17 times. Not visiting, living, so a little bit like a international guy, cross-cultural, That's and 2 adult children.
Okay. And I remember, because we are friends for a long time, that you basically had 3 lives.
Yeah, so from a professional perspective, I had 3 lives. My first life was as a civil servant. I was a diplomat for the Austrian Foreign Service. I posted first in Vienna at headquarters and then in Zambia in Africa. My second life was in the corporate world. So I worked for a couple of multinational companies in various geographies, Procter & Gamble, Danone, a French dairy company, Carlsberg, a Danish beer company, in locations a little bit all around the world, Central Europe, Southern Europe, Middle East, lately Asia. And in a third life, I was a politician. I was a co-founding member of a new party in Austria, and then I was elected a member of parliament, so I spent also 4 years as a member of parliament in Austria.
Okay, let's keep the political crisis away, because this is about the boardroom talks, and let's focus about your experience from managing the crisis in Myanmar. Tell us a little bit more.
Okay, that was a very interesting experience. It shows that the learning curve never stops. At that time, I was the managing director for Carlsberg in Myanmar, formerly named Burma. It was a challenging assignment from the beginning, but okay, every assignment has its challenges. But then came a military coup, and this was unexpected. And this raised the level of challenge, stress, risk, and crisis to a new level. That was quite extraordinary. I learned a lot. It was very tough, and I'm happy to share some learnings about this. Maybe can be of use for others. I wish nobody to go through a military coup, but crises do come in various forms. It doesn't have to be a military coup. It can be an earthquake, can be other things.
Exactly. That's what crisis management is about. Not only about managing a corporation out of crisis, but it could be, like you said, it could be an earthquake, tsunami, or a military coup. So, describe your memories, your experience.
Well, there had been already some rumors that maybe the military wanted to take over. But the interesting thing is the day before the coup in the evening, I happened to have dinner with the Danish ambassador. Mm-hmm. It was a Danish company, so I had connection with the Danish ambassador. And we both agreed that there would be no coup. And most people agreed there would be no coup. And the reason was that saying, the military in Myanmar are in a very good position. They have by constitution 25% of the seats in the parliament, so they can block anything they don't want. In Myanmar, the army has its own businesses, so it's a corporation. So they were living very comfortably without being held accountable for anything. So we thought, it wouldn't be rational to make a military. Why do this? And I think it shows how mistaken we were, because at 6 o'clock in the morning, I got a call from the Danish ambassador, said, Christoph, wake up, there's been a coup. And they took power. And why? We had mistakenly assumed, projected on the military, our rationale, our thinking, our logic. you cannot, this is a mistake we often make, businessmen, that we assume other players, non-business players, play by the same rules like us, or they think the same way as us. They have the same priorities, like the wealth of the country, or even their own wealth. And we did not understand that for the Myanmar military, especially for the coup leader, it was about power. Mm-hmm. Power is of the essence. Power for the sake of power. And everything else is subordinate to the desire to hold, demonstrate visibly power. And this applies for sure to the junta now in Myanmar in place. Mm-hmm. I think it applies also to other dictators all around the world. And therefore, my first lesson is be prepared for this kind of event. Don't project your rationale onto others. Mm-hmm. Try to put yourselves in their shoes and therefore imagine what they could do.
Can you be prepared? Can a company be prepared for such an event?
Not really. You cannot prepare for all kinds of events. I mean, this was a military coup, but the same country suffered a few weeks ago a devastating earthquake. Okay, so already Myanmar has suffered 2 crises in short order, and there could be others. Tsunamis. The pandemic was also a crisis which affected, of course. You cannot prepare for every eventuality. However, what you can do is put in place a leadership that can cope under pressure, can be prepared for crisis possibilities in terms of functionally prepare for certain things like, redundant communication systems. Just to give you an example, I can talk to you more about that. But also personally, from a character point of view, people who are resilient, who have proven that they don't crack under pressure. And I can tell you, when this happens, an event like this separates the wheat from the chaff. I saw leaders who really couldn't stand it. I mean, literally were in my office crying because they couldn't handle the pressure of the possibility of being, dying or whatever. And others, surprisingly, extremely resilient, tough as nails, and not only those that you think. Okay. So it's an interesting experience. Yes, you can prepare to some extent by the choice of the right team and also some rehearsals of potential crisis, but not for all eventualities.
Okay, we will touch both the leadership and the communication. So let's start with the leadership. What are the leadership qualities a leader should have? A leader managing a crisis should have?
I think that leader should show a certain strength of character, resilience. Now, that's of course very difficult to ascertain. When we hire executives, we go through through experience, through functional capabilities, the fundamental character, the ability of a leader to resist, not to crack under pressure and extreme situation is something that's much, much more difficult to ascertain. You can look at his or her CV, of course. Has the person already been in similar situations? You can look even at his professional life. Let me give you an example. I myself am a skipper. Okay, so I would assume that somebody who has skippered a sailing boat with a crew of 10, responsible also legally for the life of his crew, has been maybe through a couple of storms already. I assume he or she would be more able to cope also other types of crises than one who has only been a nice weather captain. Okay, so this is again difficult to ascertain, but it can be done. If you want to look at it, you can, with a higher degree of probability, select those leaders who are of this sort.
Can you train someone for this? Can an internal permanent employee become all of a sudden a crisis leader?
No. You cannot train somebody. When the crisis hits, you will realize that some of them are ready to cope with it, to handle it, and others are not. If you don't have anybody on board, then you have to resort to the interim. Then you call somebody in from outside, either as the CEO or in a function. So in our case, for instance, we needed urgently a highly qualified person for safety and security. We're talking about transfer of cash, huge amounts across the country. We're talking about potentially evacuating people. We didn't evacuate anybody, but we had to be ready. And of course, we didn't have, we're selling beer, selling beer. We didn't have in the team somebody who had this capacity. So we flew somebody in, a French ex-military guy from Cambodia, and sat with us for some time and gave us a tool, gave us the context, drew a blueprint of what needs to be done. So we had the interim manager fitting this slot. Okay, you cannot have all slots ready.
Very, very interesting. I'm sure the next question will be very challenging and interesting. Selling beer in Myanmar during a putsch, a coup d'etat. How do you operate the working cycle, the cash management cycle?
That is a very good point you raise, because let me take this thing. We were lucky that we're in industry where cash is king. Let me go one step back. After the coup, a lot of things broke down completely. One of them was the banking service, because there was civil disobedience, so the employees refused to go to the bank were closed down. So for months, you could make transfer, but you not pick up money. You could not make transfer abroad or from abroad into Myanmar and vice versa. So there you realize that what we take for granted now these days, you send money, receive money using your cell phone, etc. This all breaks down. And suddenly we were thrown back 100 years, and it was a cash-only economy. Now, we as a brewer were lucky that a lot is cash from the beginning. So at the beer stations, the people paying cash, not with card in Myanmar. The beer stations, the taverns, whatever, the bars, pay the wholesalers in cash. And the wholesalers usually would pay us with a transfer. But in case we reverse it, okay, just send us the cash. So we set up an entire cash collection system covering the entire country. It's a big country. I mean, from the southern tip to the northern tip of Myanmar, the distance is a little bit more than from Copenhagen to Istanbul. It doesn't seem... It's wedged, the country is wedged between two giants, India and China. So on the map, it looks like, okay, not big, but in reality, it's a huge country. So even flying from the south to the north, it's a 4-hour flight, okay? So we had to set up a cash collection system covering and then bringing the cash centrally to Yangon, where we bought 8 safes, huge safes, each the size of the fridge, to collect and store the cash. We had even to check that in the office, the room we put it in, the floor was solid enough to take the weight of 8 cash. The money there, the value is not very high, so we are talking about cubic meters of cash. We're talking about, cash coming on pallets and then redistributing to the employees. So we're paying employees and our suppliers. Some of them were very happy to receive cash because they had the same issue. So we were a cash platform as a brewer. We were paying our employees twice a month. They were very happy. Other employees didn't get paid for months, but we could pay them cash. So twice a month, we'd call them in. It was the cash day. There was a schedule starting 9 o'clock in the morning till late afternoon. They're coming in and getting paid in cash at the head office, and also at the 17 stations we had all over the country. There too, we would have this process of paying cash at the brewery in Yangon, at the headquarters, the brewery in Bagos, at the headquarters in Yangon, and then 16 other locations would pay the employees in cash. Collect the cash, transport the cash, store the cash, pay in cash, and of course record all of this. It was a very new experience.
So you had to introduce a structure into what became a chaos within hours, right?
Yeah. Within hours, it took us a couple of weeks to have the whole structure in place.
I mean, the chaos erupted within hours. Of course, it took you.
It took us a few chaos. I mean, everything frozen, no internet, no nothing, no banking system. Of course, curfew. You couldn't go on the street for a couple of days, and then things returned more or less to normal. But it remained a cash economy for 6 months.
We know from our projects that companies, they might have a very suitable, stable, and a perfect permanent manager. But once the crisis hits, his behavior changes a lot. And he is, in many cases, absolutely not fit and able to manage a crisis. Did you have an experience where the existing board members were not suitable?
Well, let me put this way. When the crisis hit, some members of the leadership team proved not to be able to resist to the pressure. Okay, one of them chose to return to Europe. Another one coped, but as I said, crying in my office. Both of them were functionally very good managers. Okay, I like to emphasize this. So it was not for lack of functional capabilities or even leadership capabilities under normal circumstances. But when the circumstances are not normal, then, as I said before, it separates the wheat from the chaff. Now, having said that, it is not a problem as long as you have the critical mass within your leadership team, actually at all levels, of people who are able to cope. Okay, not everybody is able to cope with the psychological challenge of living under a military coup, with the potential threat to its own life, to the life of the family, the children, okay, the employees. You see employees being dragged away by the police, and we were lucky. All our employees came back, but in Myanmar, when the police drags you in a police office, some of them never came out.
Didn't make it back. Okay.
Yeah, some of them were disappeared in a police station 10 years ago, 5 years ago, 2 years ago. We still don't know what happened to them.
Okay. So there's no communication back?
Not from the police station. No. Sometimes they re-emerge. I mean, as I said, all our employees, those who are taken for good reason or bad reasons, I mean, you get scooped up sometimes just because you are in the wrong place at the wrong moment. All of them made it back. One of them made it more than a month, but he made it back. Yeah.
Good. Let's go to the second part, and that's communication. What's the role of communication in a crisis scenario?
Communication is of the essence. Because in a crisis scenario, whatever the type of crisis, by the way, you need absolutely real-time information going both ways. From your surrounding, from what happens at the brewery, the factory, what happens in the rest of the country, in your other centers, to the headquarters, to the leadership team, between the leadership team, communication. Sometimes the leaders are not all in the same room. And then the other way around. I mean, you take decisions, you want to implement it, so the communication that must flow the other direction. And the challenge is that under crisis, first, the need for real-time information and very speedy communication is more of the essence than under normal times. At the same time, very often, the regular communication channels have broken up. There is no internet. There's no WhatsApp. There's no SMS. Suddenly, you rely on fixed line. Oh, fixed line are still working. Now, thank God we have a few fixed line left. Or you rely on people on motorbikes, traveling from A to B and passing on the message. So in this situation, we had to set up a new communication network using special. We found an app that was able to communicate directly from cell phone to cell phone, something similar to Bluetooth, but not Bluetooth, a longer distance. And we set up a sort of network and duplicate so that everybody had contact. 2 people has always contact to 10 other people, and those 10, each one had contact to another 10, but always 2 of them. So that to build a redundancy, it's not ideal. But we had, within a few days, to build an alternative communication system. And I think the interesting point here is that this is the kind of thing that you can prepare beforehand.
Yes.
Oh, we brought also 2 satellite phones. At that time, there was not yet the Starlink system for Mr. Musk. So I'm not sure it exists over Myanmar, maybe. At that time, didn't ask us. We had the old-fashioned Navsat, a satellite system. Or Inmarsat, I don't remember the brand, but they were very expensive. But okay, they were. And we had 2 such phones, one with me, one with the finance director, at different locations, to be able to communicate with headquarters, because they're always in the dark. What happens in Myanmar? Black box.
Black box. So you have to forget immediately, I assume, that you have to forget immediately how the business was running until the moment and change your mindset and everything on the day one.
Yes. Now, this may sound obvious because, you have a coup. So the obvious thing is you reprioritize everything. You forget the monthly report, the quarterly report, the succession plan, the launch of the new brand, the new campaign. All this is of yesterday, is of no importance whatsoever. What you focus is on the safety of in this case, it was the safety of the people, the employees, and then the safety of the assets. That was the second priority. And nothing else counts. Now, you'd be surprised how long it takes for some managers to switch. I mean, it sounds obvious, okay? But it takes sometimes 24 to 48 hours to understand that you have to make tabula rasa. Erase whatever you were doing. forget. You start on a blank sheet. What are the priorities? Now, in the case of a coup, that's maybe more obvious than in other situations,
Yes.
because not every crisis is of the nature of like an earthquake or a military coup. Sometimes crises are less palpable. But still, I think it's very important then for the leadership team to recognize this and to have the courage to postpone, to freeze, to ditch, to abandon all other priorities and focus, priorities.
Okay. You've been a CEO, like you already mentioned, in Danone, Carlsberg, etc. Yes, this Myanmar crisis, what we discuss it's an extreme. It's really
Absolutely,
a
an extreme.
low probability, high impact scenario. What other crises have you led companies through, and what are your takeaways?
I wouldn't say that I was lucky not to have to go through a similar, strong crisis. But my takeaway is that you can prepare psychologically for it, okay? And there are two ways to prepare. The one is to run mock exercises. And they're very useful. May I give one example? So I was at Danone and we said, okay, on this day, we're going to have a mock crisis management exercise. Okay. So we came to the office knowing today's crisis management, and we expected to have what you expect in a food company, okay, a recall problem, a product turned bad, a batch has some mold in it, must be recalled. These are classical things.
Sorry to interrupt you, so classical thing, like a recall of a product, can create a crisis.
Yeah, but in the context of a food company, it's probably not a crisis because everybody's ready for it. There's a plan for it. You know what to do. You have, other subsidiaries have been through it, so you can draw on the experience of managers who have been through it in another place, or we have plans ready. But on that day, the consultant who was leading the crisis exercise took us by surprise. So the exercise was not a product recall. The exercise was the following scenario: outside of the dairy, the production plant, one of our own trucks, with a big Danone logo on it, had run over a child, dead child, on the street, in the outskirts of town. And I can tell you, it was a mock exercise. It was a rehearsal. After 1 hour, everybody of us was like this, because although it is a training exercise, the scenario, that child on the street, and everything which comes with it, doesn't matter who's at fault. It doesn't matter whether the child was running across the truck and it's not the truck driver's way. It doesn't matter. You are in a horror scenario and you have to deal with it. And after 1 hour to us, it becomes very, very real. So what I'm trying to say is that this is the kind of exercise that can prepare you psychologically, mentally for the crisis, which be another crisis. Another name is an earthquake, or it's a fire, or it's an abduction, okay? What happens with your CEO has been abducted? There's a ransom request. What do you do? Who is in charge? Do you have an alternative team? And this brings me to the second point. What you can do, however, we cannot train for it, but you can prepare some obvious things. Do you have a B and C communication system ready? Do you have hard copies of the list of your employees, the address, the telephone number in place other than the office? Or is it everything concentrated in your office? Do you have evacuation plan? If your entire teams cannot be reached, it doesn't have to be abduction. Maybe they're on a leadership team meeting and they're cut off from the world because they've been an avalanche, okay, in the mountains. Do you have a B team ready? Do you have for every team, for the finance director, the HR, do you have a second person and they can step in? And do they know they have to step in? Did the headquarters agree this is the B team? Not just one guy, the entire B team? Things like that.
If you were to give a recommendation to clients thinking about, let's say they might slip into a crisis mode because of a recession, deindustrialization, expected or unexpected events, how would you describe the leadership qualities or the characteristics of an interim crisis CEO?
Okay, for the interim crisis CEO, as I said before, he must have proven his resilience. You cannot afford the luxury of assumption. You may assume this from your regular leaders, but once you're in the situation that, for whatever reasons, you're taking the interim CEO, this person must have proven his or her resilience, that he's able to operate under fire, literally, okay? This is a must. Then, of course, the functional capabilities, okay? The ability to convey trust. I mean, you're bringing in a person from outside the organization, you know, maybe from outside the country, maybe from outside the industry.
Yes.
And suddenly you ask that person to lead a team. He has no credentials with the team. I mean, he never worked with them. He doesn't know the team. He's, you know, coming from outside and in a crisis situation. So the most important characteristic of this, he must be resilient, okay, proven resilient. As I said, ideally in a business context, can be different contexts as well, maybe. Second, of course, a very, very good team leader, able to instill trust from the beginning. And there are ways to instill trust, okay? And so you want to take somebody who has proven that he's and then the third one is the functional, of course, capabilities, the experience, etc. But the first two are characteral, no, that's not the right word, character features, and they are the most important one. And then third come, of course, the functional capability of you know, knowing finance, needing to read a balance sheet, to lead a sales team, you know, to things like that, of course.
If you go through a typical CV, you find there, of course, the sector experience.
Yeah.
Whatever, automotive, medtech, pharma, chemistry.
Yeah.
You find the functional experience, HR, sales, manufacturing. But what you don't find is the ego, power, trust, and ability to lead through the crisis. So what's the role of ego, trust in a crisis management?
I think trust is of the essence. So the trust must go both ways. So the interim manager must gather the trust from his team, either the entire board or if he's a functional leader of his one. He must also gather, of course, the trust immediately from his client. So from the headquarters, whether it's a corporation, whether it's a private equity firm, and those are different animals sometimes. So he must, it's a very difficult thing to gather the trust from both sides at the same time and very quickly. And those are, so this is of the essence, okay, to gather trust. Ego, look, I know we live in a world where, you know, said, oh, you know, ego is not good, egocentric guy. The managers who have those capabilities, they usually have quite a big ego, to be honest with you. And that's okay, if it doesn't come in the way, okay? So you will not find interim managers, interim CEOs being able to take up the challenge, who are self-effaced, you know, second-row people who are good thinker, analytical. No, that's not the kind of people. So you will find very often that have a slightly inflated ego. But as I said, if it doesn't come in the way, that's okay. That's okay.
Okay. Let's go now to make us a little bit smile. What's your most beautiful experience or a memory on this tough period? Some story. What's the most beautiful story from this experience?
Well, the most beautiful was maybe, I don't know, it's funny. I'm coming back to the cash management, okay? So we had twice a month, at least at headquarters, we had this room dedicated for the payment. We had 4 tables. On each table, we had a pile of money. I mean, talking a pile, we're talking a pile this high, this wide, okay? And 3 people. One was with a money counting machine. We had to buy them, so counting the money. Another one was taking record, okay? Taking document of the employees coming in, okay? We owe you so much millions, okay? So there we count, you know, you signed that you received the money. And a third person doing nothing, touching nothing, just supervising to others. Because a lot of cash, you know,
disappears.
And we had 4 tables like this. And then another, a 10th person, who, no, for 13, so 4 times 3 is 12 plus 1, 13th person, overlooking the 4 tables, okay? And this scene, it reminded me of, you know, movies handling with drug cartels, where they count the money. And the only difference is that in the movies, the people handling either the drug or the money. We're not handling drugs, of course, just the money. So in the movies, you will see very often that it's very often ladies that are just in the panties and bra, okay, so that they cannot walk out hiding the money. Now, we're in Myanmar. All the employees in HR except one were ladies. So we're talking those 13 ladies handling the counting the money, handling money. And I told them once jokingly, you're lucky, we trust you. You come fully dressed there, and we don't force you to strip down to panties and bra because we know you're not going to walk out holding the money. And they laughed and they were good humored. But this scene, of those 13 ladies handling literally mountains of money, it was so reminiscent of scenes from those movies. It put a smile on my face, although the situation was quite dramatic. But yeah.
Interesting. So, what is more important? The sector experience, like FMCG, retail, what you bring to the table, or the experience from managing a crisis?
I think from managing a crisis, okay? Because the sector experience, first, you can learn it very quickly if you're smart. Second, usually you land as an interim and you have a team. Hopefully, it's not entirely disappeared. Even if the leadership team is not there, you will find usually in an organization enough resources to fill in the gaps. Even if you're not familiar with the distribution of beer in Myanmar, you will find enough people who will tell you how distribution works for your company in Myanmar, and so on. And even if you're not a super duper guy on cash management, and this was of the essence, cash management, by the way, hopefully we will find in team the one or two people who can help. The other things you cannot fill. I mean the ability to operate reliably under pressure in a crisis, to gather the trust of the people, to set the priorities right, to communicate in the right tone. This cannot be replaced. That's why you hire the interim. May I make an analogy? Again, I'm a skipper. So imagine you're the skipper on a sailing boat. 10 people, you're the skipper, nine crew member, nice weather, everything's fine. You're sailing, drinking beer, etc. And then suddenly comes the storm. You have 6, 7, or 4, and you have to make a decision. You return to port. It's 200 miles. Sail through the storm is 50 miles to the other port. Okay, half the crew is seasick. Okay, they try to disagree about what to do. You're the skipper. They look up at you. And what they expect from you in this situation is they want trust. They want you to see that you're in charge, that you're not afraid, that you take a decision. And this is the most important thing. Show resolve, show stamina, and then they will trust you. You don't have to be the helmsman. You don't have to be the navigator. You cannot be the engineer at the same time. You have to rely on your crew to do those things. But you are the leader of the team. You are the skipper, and you are the only one. And on a boat, you're legally also accountable for the life of those teams, and in the company too, to a certain extent. As I said, in Myanmar, it was the first. Thank God, the only time in my life as a corporate executive where the life of employees was at stake on a regular basis.
Okay. Let's go to a completely different topic. We are in a cross-cultural executive interim management, and you lived in many countries, many continents. What are the main differences, cultural differences in managing a crisis, let's say in Europe and outside Europe?
I would say that outside Europe, certainly in Asia, there's a much higher readiness, let's say, to take the leadership, to take the orders top down. Let's put it this way. So the expectation is that the senior leader will make the decision, hopefully the right one, and there's a willingness to follow. In Europe, there is more debate. Let's put it this way. So everybody thinks that he can be the leader of the crisis. Now, and I'm not saying the one thing is right or the wrong. I mean, you must adjust to the culture. So in Asia, where there's these expectations, of course you take the advice of your leadership team, but you don't make it a democratic decision-making process. You certainly want to listen to them because they bring expertise you don't have. as a foreigner, you may not even, in my case, I didn't even understand the local language, so I have to rely very much on, what was happening, translation, etc. But there was an expectation that would listen to them. There was not an expectation that go around the table and say, who votes how, okay? In Europe, it's different, and you have to adjust to it. Don't come into a European board and say, oh, it is a crisis now. We are moving to dictatorship modus, okay? And please all follow me. This will not come down well. This will be resisted, and at the end it will be counterproductive. So even in terms of crisis, in Europe, and probably also in the US, I would say, because I was working in Europe, there's an expectation that the leadership team will be involved to a high extent. What I would, however, counsel in both cases, don't think of your crisis management team as just the usual leadership team. In a crisis, you may have to co-opt into the crisis team other managers from the N-2 or even N-3, depending on the situation, right? I'll give you an example. In Myanmar, because my leadership team were all foreigners, partly Asians, but none of them was Burmese, okay? I co-opted into the leadership team a young gentleman who was actually my PR manager. He happened to be reporting directly to me, but he was not part of the leadership team. But he's the only one who spoke Burmese. He was someone who could listen to the news in the original language, didn't need a translation, didn't need a summary, etc., and could communicate directly to me and to the others about what happened. I can tell you, there was some resistance at the beginning. And who is he to join the inner circle? Okay. We are us, the leadership team, and this young gentleman. But it makes sense, okay? And I can think of different situations where different expertise is needed. So think of it, adapt to the situation. Your crisis management team may not be the same as your classical leadership team. You may co-opt some people in, and maybe some people are not as needed as under sunny days.
Good point. In every crisis, we see it in the crisis project. Some leaders, employees, team members became useless or counterproductive. What's your recommendation? How to handle this in a crisis mode? When not everyone is on the boat changed direction dramatically.
That's a very tough question, okay? Because
we only have tough questions on this podcast.
Okay.
The easy ones, we leave it for the others.
Okay. Well, on the regular times, I would say, you try to co-opt the person, you try reassignment to a different role, etc. Now, in terms of crisis, there's one luxury you don't have is time. Okay, so sometimes you have to be decisive, and if you happen to have somebody who's actually toxic, then you must neutralize this person. I mean, when I say neutralize, take him out of the team, of course. One way or the other. There are different ways to this. There's the diplomatic way, there's the hard way, there is the soft way, but you must be... it's like mutiny. I'm coming back to the skipper thing. You cannot accept mutineers on the ship. That cannot be. So... on a ship, you put in a small boat and, good luck. Don't do this in cooperation. But yes, you have to have the courage, the decisiveness to take action. Now, sometimes you can rescue that person. Maybe there's a misunderstanding. Maybe the person felt he was not listened to or something like that. Could be. So look at yourself as well, okay? It's not only just that person who is, taking on the wrong foot. Maybe you did something. So it's worth double-checking to make sure that you don't discard a potentially valuable member who can bring input and value. But if you come to the conclusion, and you need to come quickly, that no, it is not worth the risk, then you have... And it's a difficult decision. In any situation... eliminating people from a team, taking them out, is a much, much harder decision than bringing them on board. And in a crisis, especially.
Yeah, but that's the crisis mindset. You don't have the luxury of time. You have to make a decision under pressure, time pressure, and in the absence of information. Because you don't know how long the crisis will be.
Exactly.
Look at COVID, whatever. You don't know. Is it 1 week, 1 month, half years, etc. So, but you have to make a decision and adapt very, very quickly. Perfect. What would be your key recommendation to companies that are feeling safe now and feel like, okay, there might be some tides. And I'm thinking now about the European companies that say, no, we are big, we are safe. There has been crisis, we survived them. We see now a little bit of a market shifts, maybe recession, maybe the industrialization. What they don't see is they are standing at the brink of something else. What would be your key recommendation to companies staying at the brink of a crisis but not realizing this?
Well, first, you already give me an answer. I'll give two recommendations. One is realize it, okay? There is no safety in size. For instance, you said big companies. Indeed, big companies think that because they're big, they're safe. That's not true. The Titanic sank, okay? Pan Am went bankrupt, okay? So size is is not a safety jacket, okay? That's the first thing. So realize that things can turn sour very, very, very quickly, and size does not give you protection. That's the first thing. And the second thing is, I wouldn't say assume the worst, but be prepared for the black swan, okay? The low probability event with a huge impact. I mean, impact meaning that threatens the survival of the company as such. We do it already to some extent. We take insurance, right? We take fire insurance. We take life insurance for our kids, for our families. So why don't companies do it? Now, again, you cannot prepare for every potential scenarios, okay? So you cannot constantly have a B plan for the terrorist act, for the abduction, for the earthquake, for the tsunami, for the military coup, for the economic meltdown. No, you cannot. But you can prepare yourself as a CEO and also your team for the mindset. What if? One way is, of course, making twice a year this exercise, this training. It's time well invested. It's very well invested. I would recommend any company to run those crisis scenarios. So half a day, and you will see. And the second thing is, to the extent possible, make sure that in your leadership team you have those few people who have the mettle, who have this ability to go through fire, this resilience. It doesn't have to be the entire team. And they don't have to be ex-Delta Force members, not at all, okay? But make sure you have a few of them that have been through similar situations, either in the corporate world or in the private one, salvaged a boat that was sinking, things like that. And then already you will be much, much more prepared for the crisis when it hits. Because, at the end of the day, the question is not whether the crisis will hit you. It's when it will hit you. It's like the car accident. It's not a question of whether one day you will have a car accident. It's when you will have a car accident. Maybe now when we go down and drive home, maybe in 2 months, maybe in 2 years. The car accident will happen. Are we ready for it? Same thing for the company. The crisis will hit you. Are you mentally ready for it? Is your team mentally ready for it? Do you have the B plan? Do you have a phone number for the interim manager provider who can give you at 48 hours notice a new CFO, a new plant manager, a security manager?
Christoph, it's been a pleasure talking to you like always. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much for the opportunity, Bohuslav.